Everyone, welcome to today's Quick Tips and Tricks webinar. This is episode 122, and your hosts for today are Tom Coleman, David Anderson, and myself, Alyssa Gomez. Now, before we jump into our tips for today, I want to first take a moment to tell you about 3 new programs that we are just starting in the eLearning Heroes community. You all are actually quite lucky because you are among the first to hear about some of these programs and to get access to them. So very excited to share a little bit more about these 3 programs here, the Template Creation Guilds, Peer Pods, and Labs. So let me first tell you about the Template Creation Guilds. And before I do this, I'm just going to share a link in the chat area so you can open up the information as I am sharing it with you here. Okay, so our Template Creation Guilds are specifically for folks who, first of all, primarily build courses in Rise. And for these first guilds, we are looking for folks who create training on sales enablement or customer service training. So if that's you, if you primarily build courses in Rise and you often create training on sales enablement or customer service, we are looking for you to join this program. So this is going to be a 4-week small group working session where you'll collaborate with other e-learning developers and training pros within your niche to create practical, ready-to-use Rise templates that will be posted in the eLearning Heroes community for everyone to use. So if you join this Template Creation Guild, you're going to get live collaboration time with other folks who are in the same industry as you, as well as Articulate experts. You'll get support from us and also a chance to co-create those templates that will be shared in the community forever. And so that will be really cool that your name will get to be on those templates. So if you work in one of these 2 areas and you primarily build courses in Rise and you really want to build something meaningful for the community, this is a really awesome opportunity for you. Go ahead and click the link that I posted in the chat area and let us know if you'd like to join the Template Creation Guild. The next program is Peer Pods. I want to share this link with you in the chat area as well. So if this sounds interesting to you, you can have access to some more resources. I'm just going to post that right in here. So Peer Pods is a whole new way to learn together in the community. So these are short learning groups that run from about 3 to 4 weeks, and it brings people together in the community around various topics. So for example, a few peer pods that we have coming up are Rise Tips and Tricks. We have one on deck for new to instructional design, and then we have one coming up later in the year on accessibility. So if you're wondering, well, what's a peer pod? How does it work? Well, each week you'll get prompts, resources, and a space to share with other folks in the peer pod who are all working on the same goal. And it's a really low effort way that you can engage with folks and it will easily fit your schedule. You can check in just a couple of times a week, talk about what you're learning, and ultimately get lots of ideas from other people's experiences. It's a free opportunity to join in on others who are interested in learning the same thing. So if this sounds interesting to you and you'd like to learn more about one of those 3 topics that I'm sharing here, definitely check out the Peer Pods link I shared in the chat area. And finally, let's talk about labs. So let me post a link in the chat area about labs so you can grab this one as well. By the way, all 3 links that I'm sharing here are all linked on the very first link, that resources page for today's webinar. So you don't need to keep up with all these links. You can just grab that resources link for today's webinar and you'll find everything there. So let's chat about labs. Now, if you are a person who thinks to yourself, I would really love to have a hand in the new features that come into Articulate 360 products, whether it's Rise or Storyline. I would love to test them before other people get access to them. I would love to provide my feedback on them. Well, Labs is the answer to that. So Labs is an opportunity to try early experimental features before they are actually fully released in Articulate 360. So you will be among the first to test out the features and provide your feedback. So it's just a simple way that you can turn on the feature in your Articulate 360 settings, and then you can actually use the feature in your projects while the feature is still in development. So this is, an option to shape the future of the features. And always keep in mind that the features could change over time. That's an important thing to remember when you are part of labs is, because you are seeing the feature in such a new state, it could change over time based on the feedback that you provide. But it's a really cool way to get to see what's coming up next and how the products are going to evolve. So have a look at that group link that I shared there in the chat area. And hopefully one of those 3 things that I shared with you here sounds interesting to you, and it's a new way that you can engage in the community. All right, well, that was a lot. Let's actually get back to our scheduled programming now. So very quickly, we're each going to share what we're going to be covering today in this Quick Tips webinar. Tom, would you like to start us out here?
Yeah, my tip's pretty basic, but I've been giving away all these characters that I've been playing around with AI. And so somebody was asking me, well, what do I do with the characters? I've got them, what should I do with them? And so I thought, well, I'll show you a few different ways that you can use them and make it easier to use them, because there's a lot of them. And as a bonus, I created a 10 character pack. So for today's webinar, on that resource page, you can see there's something like 500 poses or whatever with those characters, and they're pretty good looking. I upscaled them and all that, so I'll show you how to use those.
Very cool. All right, and David, you want to talk about what you'll be sharing today?
Yeah, we had a really, I think, one of my favorite conversations in ELH in the last maybe 10 years. It was a few months old, but Jesse had posted a forum post about asking for what's everyone's favorite hidden feature. And I've been kind of collecting these, putting these together. What I thought was just amazing about it was most of the people, if not all of them, had been around the tools for like 10 plus years, and there was at least one that everyone had found, like, I didn't know about that, or I forgot about that. So just a good reminder that even folks who are using the tools all the time can certainly benefit from just checking in with the community once in a while and checking in with refresher tips. But I'll make sure to post the link so you all can check that out. But I just pulled out 5 or 6 examples that I thought were kind of standout examples because they're just so common.
Awesome, I love that. All right, and then I will finish out our session today with some different tips for AI quiz questions in both Rise and Storyline. And then we also have had some recent new Rise features that have dropped. They're those tiny features that make a big difference, and they're kind of easy to overlook. So I want to make sure you know about those, so I'll share about those as well. Well, with that, let's go ahead and get started. I will switch the presenter over to you, Tom, and you can kick us off.
All right, so let me switch to my screen here. All right, so let me show you what you have. Where's my browser window at? So in the resource page for today, which is in the link, you can go down here, and then you have access to, this is where we it's not just me, but I've been making these characters, but there's a lot of downloads in the eLearning Heroes community. So you can go in there, there's all sorts of characters, templates, and a lot of things in there. For today's webinar, I did create some characters. They're not in the community yet, but you can download it. It's a pretty hefty download. They're all upscale, but you get these 10 free characters, over 500 poses. And then what I'm going to cover today will be pretty basic, but there's a webinar I did a while back where I talked about how to set up and pre-build kind of the structure for an interactive scenario. That's a simple way to do it. And so I linked to that webinar as well. And then, if you go to the community, and a lot of people don't know that, but we've got a free download section here, and then there's the characters. And so we've been, just dropping a bunch of different characters in there. All right. So let's talk about the tip that we're going to do here. So the question somebody had for me was, well, I've got these characters. What do I do with them? What are some things I can do? I can hear somebody typing, so I don't know whose mic is open, but if we could not type, that would be nice. All right. So I was looking at different ways to handle the characters. Obviously, with the characters, the easiest thing, the first thing I'll say is these are characters that are separate from the characters that you get in Articulate. So if we go into a slide here inside of the, you go to the Insert tab if you're not familiar with Storyline, and then we have the characters here. These are pre-built, and they're part of an entire ecosystem, right? And there's a structure and whatnot to those. So this is separate from those, and this is something that we can't really modify. These are built into the system. So you'd have to insert your characters as images, and so you would just go to Picture, and then Picture from File, and then you can insert the character, right? That's pretty straightforward. Or if you have the folder open like I have here, I've got all these different characters in here, so you can see what they look like, and then you can just drag a character over. So I'll just go ahead and drag a character over in here, right? So you can bring your character in here. So I'll show you a few things, just tips, and this mostly, with these quick tips, it's really just about playing around with the tools and understanding what features are in there. So this is a good way to expose some features. So one thing with the characters, these do have, each character has almost 50 poses. And so one of the things you could do is you could set up your first character. And if you go to states here, and we go to edit states, and you can see right here where it says insert pictures as states. I'm going to go ahead. Who's this? This is Abdul. So we're going to go ahead and click on insert pictures as states, and I'm going to go to, that's Abdul. So you can see all the characters. I'm not going to insert every state, and I'll show you why. But we'll go ahead and insert a few here, and then I'll insert one of these ones that's a little wider, because you can see these are a little thinner, and then this one's wider because the guy's arms are spread out. So we'll insert that. But you can insert multiple images quickly. And now you've got these states already there built for you. Now, one of the things, when I created these characters, the image sizes aren't all the same. So you'll notice that when you scroll over the states, some of them are sized pretty well, but some of them may jump, like this one with the arms wide. See, he's jumping because the character's a different dimension. So if you did something like this, you'd have to go into the state and try to size him up. I'll show you a quick tip on sizing, because again, these are the quick tip sessions, but most of these kind of came in pretty good, right? So you might not have to do too much. What I usually do, like when I'm creating my own states, and I'll zoom in, and like I'll use the person's face as kind of the core area. And so you can right click and you can add guidelines here, vertical and horizontal. So I'll do like a horizontal guideline, and then I'll drag that to his eyes here. And then, I might do like the top of his head, and then I'll create another guideline here, and I'll do the bottom. So then I've got that. Then I might take one of these here, and say, okay, that's that side, and I'll put one more in the center, and then we grab this one and in the center. And so this is the tip here. So if you did have something like this where this state is off, I can see where I should kind of line things up. So I can tell where the top, like if we come back here, this is his chin, this is the top of his head. So I can say, okay, I know I need to resize this image. Let me zoom it out a bit, and then I would just, play around with that. And we won't go through the whole process, but then you can see how that would work, right? So you just come in here and you could resize that, that's a little closer, right? So now you've got a state that works. But the main point here is that you have all of these images, and then if you want to use them in your course, you could bring the character in with multiple states, right? And then you hit done, and then it doesn't mean that you have to use every single state, but like you could say, I want the initial state for this one right here, with his arms crossed. So I'm going to set that initial state here, and most of these poses are titled. So you can say arms crossed neutral, and then that's just the initial state. And maybe we copy this here, and we'll just create another. Well, actually, I can just duplicate the slide here. We'll duplicate the slide, and then maybe on this slide, I'm gonna move them over here. And then I want this one to be the starting state for that slide, right? I think, was that cheering? Yeah, so then you can see that's the initial state there. So the tip here is you have all these poses, you could already set up some of the poses. I personally wouldn't put every single pose in there because those files are pretty big, but you can see, you can get a few core poses. Like what I would really do in a course here is I would take a neutral pose, and then I take maybe 2 positive poses and 2 negative poses, and then I can use that and use triggers to change them back and forth. But a lot of people don't know that you can do that in the edit states, that you can come in here and do a batch import of the poses. And because they're titled, it's really nice and easy to get in there and see what's in there. So one is insert the character, put those poses in there, and you can pre-build the character, and then you don't have to go and insert and dig around and look for the characters. You'll notice too that these characters, if you go into view and you go into media library, you'll notice that all of those poses came in here, so you always have access to them. So even if you created a new scene and you didn't have that character, let's go ahead and do that. We'll create a new scene, and so even though I don't have the character here, I can always insert the character from media library. So you can insert the picture from media library, and then I'd have that character in there. So that's a tip there. The other thing you could do is you could just do a batch import to the media library, then you have all of the characters as well. So if you just went to media library, you come up here, and then you would just do an import of the characters and bring them into the course, and then they're just all available to you at any time that you want those. So that's kind of working with the characters. I'll show you something that I think would work if you always want to have access to the characters. So what I did is I took all the character poses, dropped them on a slide, and then you have up here, if you go to your slide setting, you've got your team slides. And if I click on that, I can click here and you can see it says share projects there, share scenes. So you can upload those slides and then make them available. So if I come up here, let me turn these guides off because they kind of annoy me. Let's see here, grids and guidelines. I'm going to go ahead and turn the drawing guides off. That's another tip, how to turn those off if they annoy you. All right, and we'll go ahead and they're turned off. Okay, so if I come up here to team slides, I'm going to insert a team slide already built. So it'll open up a window here. And this is a good way to have the characters immediately available to you. So you'll notice, let me go to my folder here. You'll notice I've got this character folder, and I'm seeing it by project. So if I look at it by slides, it's going to show the slide. So this is a good tip for teams, when you're working together. One is you can see I created character slides. So you could take every character, I gave you those 10 characters, and you can create character slides, and then they're quickly available to you. And on this slide, every single pose is there, and that'll bring them into the media library. The other thing I did is I just threw a bunch of the Articulate logos on there. So this is kind of a common thing, right? You've got to do branded things, and you might have some logos or certain type of imagery or things you always have to have in every course. But you can, send those assets up to a folder, and then you have those available to you. And like in this case, we'll just download. This is a slide, but the slide has all the poses on it. So when we download the slide, you'll see this here in a second. So here's the character, right? I just made the slide big, but here are all the poses, right? I don't need this slide, but what happened was when I downloaded the slide, if I go into Media Library, I now see all of the poses for this character. And so I would use them, and then when I'm done, I can delete that slide. Another bonus tip if you do stuff like that is I always have like an extra scene. So I'll just title it. This is what I would call my junk scene or junk drawer. And then I just put stuff when I'm working on things. And then when I'm done with building the course, I might delete that or just hide it so it's not visible. But that's a couple tips there, right? So one is You can bring the characters in, and then you can do that batch import with the states. The other thing is you could build these little character slides and then just go back up to slides, and you'd have to have an Articulate Teams account. And then you can upload those, so share your project, right? You can upload those, and then you'll have them stored. And then, like I was showing you, anytime you want to access those characters, you can click on that. And I don't know if I clicked. I think I clicked. My internet's a bit slow. But anyway, you can click on that, and then you can access those characters, and then you always have them available to you. So that's that. Now, the other thing is in the free templates that I gave you, I also put some backgrounds in there. So there's a bunch of different backgrounds. So here's something that I do quite a bit, and it's something that maybe a lot of Storyline users don't do, but I like to create custom themes. So let me close this out, and we'll just open up a new file. So I have all those backgrounds, right? And I want to use them with my characters and stuff. And so you're always like importing or bringing these slides in. So what I do is I'll come and build a theme. So if you go to the design tab here, and it didn't update on me, but there's two themes in here. One, there's a business theme. The other one here is a warehouse theme. So if I'm building, let's say we're doing warehouse, I get these characters a little bit more casual clothes. I'm going to click the warehouse theme. And now you can see this warehouse image here on the slide. If I come into my slide layouts, I've got layouts and I title it. So this production line, maybe I want to take my characters and put them in the loading dock. So I switch that layout, and then I can insert my characters. We're just going to grab one of the characters here. We'll grab Bobby Johnston. Maybe she's a person who walks around with signs. So she's got a sign. The world is about to end. Just walking around the warehouse, and you can do that. So you can bring your characters in there and do all this stuff. And then if you want to change that to an office theme, just come over here. You've got your business theme pack, and come in here, and then I can, same thing, I go to my layouts, and it just depends on what you want to put in there. Maybe she's walking around in the lobby. So a lot of different things you can do with that. So let me show you how to build this. And then we have tutorials and webinars that are going a lot more detail. The one I linked to in the resource page, that explains a little bit more about some of this. All right, so to create a new theme, let's just go ahead and close this out, and we'll open up a new project. And to create a new theme, all you have to do is go into View, Slide Master, and just build out whatever you want to build. And then you come up here where it says Themes, you can click it, and then you save current theme. So we're going to build a medical one. I've got a few medical images in there and show you how that works. Now, what I'm going to do just to speed up the time is I'm going to actually insert one of the previous themes, because then I can just do right click and swap the images without changing the alignment. So I'm going to come to design, and we'll just grab the business theme here. And that's just to speed up time for this demo. So I'm going to go to View, go to Slide Master. Now I already have images in here, just make it easy for me, right? So we'll come over here. I'm going to right click and just change the image. If it was a blank slide, you just, do whatever. I always start with a blank slide. So I'm going to right click, change the image. So we'll just replace the picture. And I've got these backgrounds in here. So let's grab one of here's a hospital hallway. So we'll do that here, right? So I got that. We'll come over to this one. We'll right click and change the picture. The reason I'm replacing the picture because the pictures weren't quite 16 by 9, so I had to adjust them, so I don't have to do that for this demo here. Let's just grab the patient room. We'll do one more, and we'll change. Well, this actually was a hospital reception. I put in the business by mistake, so let's go ahead and right click. We'll just change this one picture here, and I think there's a reception. Did we do patient room? Yep. All right, we'll do the lab. Okay. So we've got those. I'm going to delete these extra ones. All right, so I've got my medical pack here. And a couple things I would do when I'm doing this is I right click on here and I rename the layout. So this is, we can say hallway, right? And then we'll click here. We'll rename this layout. We'll say patient room. I'm not the best typer. And then we'll go here. This one I think already says reception, so that works. And then this one here is the lab. So we'll rename the layout and we'll call it lab. And then the other thing on these templates, I didn't do it in here, but on the other things you want to do, if you want to add on these layouts here, whatever you want to, right? So you can add some placeholders. So maybe you always want to have a title here, right? You can determine where you want to put the title, and you can dress these up, put shapes and other stuff on here, and to create some distinction to things. You can put different placeholders on here, right? Like, maybe there's placeholder content box or whatever you want to do in terms of layouts. So you can do them as many ways as you want to. You can select your color theme for this particular block. We'll just choose median. You can change your font pack, right? So you can create a new font theme in there. And then once you've got everything built and laid out the way you want it, just click on here, save current theme, and we'll just call this med test, and it just gets sent into a theme folder. And if I close this here, I'm just going to go ahead and close this. We'll get it out of Storyline. Let's just open up a new project. And I know I'm going to build this thing with the characters and medical themes. So I'm just going to come up to design. I'm going to choose my medical theme one, and there's my med test, insert that. And you can see it's got the starting slide. I can come into my layouts. Let's go ahead and look at the slide here. So I can come into my layouts here, and you can see I can, say maybe I want to do everything in the reception, and then put my characters in there or whatever I want to do. So this works. Obviously I'm speaking to the free character packs and the backgrounds I gave you, but like if you work in an environment, like let's say you worked at Costco and you do training for the warehouse there and safety and inventory and whatever the type of training they might have, you can go through the warehouse and take pictures of all these different things, and then you could build your own design theme with all of those images and stuff already built in there and available, and then you have a good starting point from that. And again, you can play around with the layouts and whatever you want to do inside that theme, but they're always then available to you. So every time you open up a course, you've got a nice starting point. So that's basically it. That webinar I have in there that shows some tips on kind of building a simple scenario structure that's reusable. That's a good place to start. And then if you have additional questions, always jump in the community. We're always in there. We can help you out. But hopefully you can use the characters. There's a ton of them in there. I literally have hundreds of them to give away. So I'm slowly getting them into the community. I can't overwhelm the community with 10,000 characters, but they're there. You play around with them. If you have questions, we can help you out.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I was just checking out those characters, Tom. I'm going to need a second hard drive if I'm going to be able to work with all of them. So I'll be putting that requisition in later today. All right, real quick, I'm going to copy the link over, show you this. You can look at it, and I really encourage you all to jump in and check these out, but then also to kind of go through and share any that you have. And like I say, we've been in the community forever. Where is the chat? There, it must be around here. There we go. And it's kind of, I think it's, while people are sharing daily, what I thought was just so remarkable here was how many folks who I know, you'll recognize people in here who work in the tools daily, and like, oh, I forgot about that. Or this first one, I'll kind of start with this one because this was a great back and forth. This is probably one of the oldest. Next to Rise versus Storyline, which one should I use? Which one should I learn first? I'd say preventing clicks on objects, whether that's a button or a video. Good debate. If you're ever playing Saturday night Storyline, trivia, this is a good one to bring up. You know, figure out what your favorite method is. But just a good example of these little things that, you know, maybe don't get always highlighted. Sometimes we highlight them in the quick tips, but a lot of times we're just taking these for granted. And so what we have here is just some of the kind of pulled out some of these examples, and I'll just go through them. But every one of those truly is a hidden gem, or it's a gem that you rely on daily. But maybe you'll find at least one in there that you didn't know was possible. All right, so with that, let me kind of talk a little bit about real quick on this first one, and that is how to prevent clicks. Now, a lot of times when folks are kind of deciding between how do I prevent, you know, clicks on a video or something like that, some of these techniques are a little bit older, meaning that they're how we used to do it in Storyline. But maybe if you worked in Storyline for a long time, you think, okay, well, that's just how I do it. That's what I know. But some updates have happened in a while in the last couple of years that really doesn't matter which approach you do. For example, we have a video that plays. I think I actually have this in my. I already have it published so we can see it. So the default order is if you put a transparent shape over the video, and you want to control that, essentially it can prevent the learner from clicking on the video. However, if the learner is using a keyboard navigation and they decide, you can see the little yellow highlight, and they want to use their keyboard to play, they've got to still have control. So you might have blocked a click, but you didn't really block a click, meaning they tab through and they have access to it. But you could use that same shape and remove the video completely from the focus order, and now there's no way for me to tab to that video to stop it. But then again, that means that there's no way to stop the video really ever until the video finishes playing. And so maybe not the best way, because a lot of what we when Storyline was released, accessibility wasn't at the forefront of everyone's design considerations like it is today. And so most we were trying to click and prevent mouses from clicking rather than keyboard navigation. A lot of folks just, I still use keyboard sometimes, it's faster, I'm really good on the keyboard. Same thing with the hotspot. For a long time, hotspots were thought, okay, that's how you block video, but hotspots don't have states. Hotspots weren't accessible, they couldn't be seen in the focus order, so there were other limitations with hotspots. Fast forward to last month, and the new way, forget about this debate. Everyone should make up, the hotspot people and the transparent shape people. Now all you need to do is select your video on the slide, and you go up to the options tab on the ribbon, and oh my land, what is that? I wish I could zoom in real quick. Pause on click. So you don't need a hotspot, you don't need a transparent shape, you don't need anything. You just choose whether or not you want that video to be clickable. Again, simple, but it's one of the longest workflows that folks kind of went back and forth on, depending on their use case and what they were doing and what that would look like. So if you haven't seen that, it's just sitting right there below video under options, and you choose this way on how you want to control the video. But another one that comes up a lot is preventing button clicks. So how do you stop someone from clicking a button until you want them to click a button? There's a lot of users who will still use things like a transparent shape or hotspot. Now, the challenge with this is back to the keyboard. So if I were to preview this and use my keyboard tab key, I would be able to bypass the transparent shape and access this button, right? So even though I prevented you from clicking it, because I can change this hotspot to hidden, this transparent shape to hidden, right? I can say when all three of those buttons have been clicked, go ahead and make that transparent shape hidden. That totally worked in the early days, but again, if with a keyboard nav, you'd still be able to reach the next button. The best way to prevent a button from being clicked is to use the built-in state. Storyline takes care of this, and I know we get a lot of users who worked in other tools, and one of the things that makes Storyline so different and so popular was it had so many built-in workflows that are already part of the kind of the built-in functionality that you didn't need triggers, you didn't need extra shapes, you didn't need a lot of workarounds. But in the states tab, you have a built-in state called disabled. It's from the drop-down menu. If I delete it and then I added another one, you'll see it in the drop-down. So what it means is when you set a shape to disabled, you might need to customize it to look a certain way, like I just did. When you do that, you can set the default state, the initial state. So when I come in here, most times our normal state is the normal state. That's what you expect. That's fine. That's what we have for the tab buttons over here. However, if I want to hold off and making this available to you to click, I can just set the initial state down here in the states. I don't even need to edit the states. I just need to make sure I've created a disabled state, and now it's disabled, and we show that state right there. And it's not going to be clickable until we make it clickable. So again, in Storyline, there's so many different ways to work. You know, in a lot of cases, your users don't know if you how to use 20 triggers or if you could do it with a built-in button feature. But now with accessibility, people using keyboards who maybe otherwise wouldn't, because courses are so navigable now, a lot of those sort of workflows are kind of exposed as maybe not a best practice. So to keep in mind, you have that accessibility, you have that disabled state. That is the Storyline way. The Storyline way. That might be a good name for a session. So again, how to prevent clicks, a lot of ways to do it, but just use the disabled state, or you could make it hidden. A lot of debate on hidden, because if all of a sudden the button pops up and it's not very obvious, sometimes the learner may not even notice. But by using hidden, the disabled, you can see it there, but you can't click it. So disabled probably makes more sense. We're used to seeing that on web forms, on websites, things like that. All right, what else do we have? Prevent button clicks. So here's this was, I think this was mine, or this, I shared one of these. I think this was it. My favorite trick, this isn't even documented, but let's say that you have something like this this is one of our demos with a slider, and you know, to create that slider, it's like, what is it, 30 states. That's a lot of states. And so let's say that I noticed that when I was going up and around 2021 was not really that, that was the one that needed to be tweaked, right? Because essentially we're just scaling this up and down for each of the states. That's how we use the slider. But the typical way would be to come into edit states and then have to keep scrolling all the way over to the button. I can tell you, if you have more than 3 or 4 or 5 states, this is how I would do it. I would go to the state that I want. I would look at that state and say, I got you, double click the state, and you're automatically on that state. That is the so much faster way to work. It's not really documented, but just double clicking the state, you can automatically jump right into that state. While we're here, the others, I need to look at the course to see who shared this one, but the other one that shared is one I actually forget about, because I just don't think about it as much. But right here, if I wanted to go ahead and edit the other rectangles, I don't have to click the done button and then go find that shape, click it, and then double click it to go in there. I'm already in the edit states workflow. So this is where I am. If I just come right over here to object, I can access every object on that slide. So there's my second chart, my performance graphic. I can just click that, and look at that. I'm already inside of that one, and now I'm into the other one. And so if I'm having to tweak these, because this was a lot of time to build these, just because of that incremental scaling for the shapes, this is a lot easier. So you have access to everything in there. If you do need to edit, you know, the text or anything that's available on that slide, on the specific slide, you can access within that state. So I always thought that was a good one, just a good reminder for that. And then what else do we have here? Oh, edit multiple states. And then this final one, I got to go into a preview. I didn't want to waste time previewing this, but this works regardless of whether you've only previewed a single slide or you've previewed the whole course. Now, I previewed the whole course, but I could just have previewed a single slide. And let's say that I'm trying to test some things and I don't want to have to keep previewing. Previewing can take some time depending on how big your slides are. Well, even if I just previewed one slide, this select menu up here in the top allows me to jump to any slide in my course. It doesn't matter if you just previewed one. You have access to every slide that is in your project file, so you could quickly jump to that slide, preview it, interact with it, test it. Especially helpful if you're doing things like we have, if you're doing things with variables and you're trying to do some branching where things can only go ahead at certain points. You're like, I don't want to have to go through 10 slides to test this. I just want to see if my variable checks off or if it's tracking. Just jump into that slide and you're already there. So you kind of bypass whatever navigation restrictions you have or whatever branching or hidden slides that you have. Even if it's not showing up in the menu, it's still going to be available in your project. So you have access to that one. All right, highly encourage you to go through that forum. what I'm putting together is a series of videos for all of these, and each one of these that folks shared, and just kind of highlighting where what each of these does, and just kind of crediting the author who put that together. But I'll make that available for everyone. But just, it's worth going through. Hopefully you'll update them, and then I'll have some more to update for that that final course. But go through them, make a note of the ones you know. That's great. Let us know if you're using them, and if it's one that you really forgot about or something, also let us know, because it's just a good reminder for things that you know. Again, if we're not using them in our workflow, then sometimes you just put them off to the side and don't remember it. And there it is. This one with Michael's a really good one about window. All right, so that's 5 or 6 quick ones. Hope that was helpful, and hope to see you in the Storyline Gems discussion.
Okay, so today I'm going to cover some tips for, excuse me, quiz questions in Storyline and in Rise, and I'm specifically going to cover quiz questions that you create with AI Assistant, but really you could use these tips with questions that you write yourself. It would all work just the same. So I'm just going to start out here in Storyline, and then we'll hop over to Rise. So I have this sample Storyline file here about active listening. And let's say I want to create a quick quiz question for this slide. And I want to use AI Assistant because I don't want to write the question myself. So right up here, I'm just going to click on the question button. This is here in the AI Assistant category at the top of my ribbon here. So I'll just click on question. And then you'll notice right over here on the right-hand side in the AI chat panel, it's going to ask me, okay, what's your question topic? Or you can let me choose a topic based on the content. I'm just going to go ahead and let AI Assistant come up with the question. So let's see what the question is going to be here. All right, so the question here is, why is active listening crucial when interacting with customers? I think this is an okay question, but sometimes I find that AI Assistant will give me questions that don't require so much higher order thinking, and sometimes I would prefer a question that is a little bit at that next level. So one quick tip of something you can do here to ask it to revise the question is you can tell the AI Assistant to turn the question into a scenario. This is a prompt that I often use in both Rise and Storyline. So here I'm just going to say, rewrite this question as a scenario between a manager and an employee. And you can put any words there, a scenario between whomever. And so let's go ahead and have this generate another question and see what we get here. See if the question is a little bit better than our previous one. Okay, so notice here, now I actually have a scenario. So this says, during a one-on-one meeting, an employee expresses frustration, and then as their manager, how can you use active listening? So here, now you have so many opportunities to do things to really bring your course to life. You could add some characters on your slide. You could even create a slide before this question that actually shows, speech bubbles of the two people talking to each other, things like that, all just based on this one question that AI Assistant generated for you. So let's go ahead and insert this question. And here is where my next tip comes in. So I actually have seen this comment a couple of times in the eLearning Heroes community, and I thought I better address this in an upcoming quick tips, because I think people don't know actually how easy it is to design the look and feel of an AI generated question slide. So have a look at the 3 slides in my course. So as you can see, my slides are designed with some nice background images and white boxes behind the text, so it looks really nice. But then my AI generated question slide is just a white background with text on it. And so I have seen people say, oh, it's very cumbersome to create these AI generated questions because they don't match the design of my slide. And what that tells me is that folks aren't using Slide Masters, or they aren't using a designed question layout within the Slide Master, because if you were doing that, your question slide would have a design. So let me just show you how easy it is to create one if you've never done that before. So all I'm going to do here is first open up my Slide Master, and actually Tom showed this a bit in his tips as well. So I'm just going to go over to View and Slide Master. And here you can see I am definitely not using Slide Masters in this in this course. Everything here is just a plain white background. But you can see that I came in on this question slide master. So anytime a quiz question gets added to my course, it's going to use this master slide, just a title at the top with the question choice underneath. Well, I want to keep this because I may want to use it, on a future slide or work off of it. So I'm actually not going to replace this, but I'm going to create a new question layout that I can switch to if I want to have a different design on my quiz question slide. So here what I'm going to do is click Insert Layout. And I don't need this slide title on it, so I'm just going to delete that. Okay, and so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the placeholders from the original layout, which would be the question title and the question choice. And I'm just going to copy those and paste them here onto this new layout that I just created. And then I can just do some, some adjustments here. So I'm just going to move it temporarily. Now let's add some design elements. First thing I want to do is add a really nice striking background image because that's going to match the rest of my course. So let's go in and insert an image here. We'll just use the content library. Maybe we'll find something about like an office, for example. Okay, this looks fine. We'll go with this image here. Go ahead and insert that. I'm going to drag it to the bottom of my timeline here so that it's below my two placeholders. And then I'll also readjust the size, so that it fills the entire slide here. So let me just adjust that size and then do a little bit of cropping here. You get the idea. Okay, that looks good. All right, now I need to put a white shape on top of this so that my question text can be on top of that white shape. So I'll just go to Insert and Shape. We'll just do a nice rectangle. Something like this will work just fine. And then, of course, you want to align it and make sure it's aligned correctly. And I'll do a white fill and a white outline here. All right, maybe we could even add a little drop shadow if you really wanted to. Okay, again, I'm going to click and drag this down on my timeline below the placeholders. Okay, and maybe I also want to add another little design element, maybe an icon of a question mark here on the left-hand side, something like that. So I'm going to go back to my Insert tab and click on Icons. And here I'll look for a question mark. See what we come up with. The cool thing about icons is you can change the color of them very easily. So I think I'll go with this one here. We'll insert that and let's see, I'll drag it over, make it a little bit bigger. And then I can easily change the color here. So let's see, I want to go with something that's part of my theme because I want to make sure it's cohesive with the rest of my course. Maybe I'll just go with this blue color or something like that. That'll work. Okay, make sure that's aligned there to the middle of the slide. Okay, and then the final thing I'll do here is just adjust the placeholder. Maybe I want it to be like here at the top, something like that. And then I want my question choice to fill this space here. Okay, this is looking pretty good. Now you might be thinking, wow, that was a lot of work just for one question. Well, not to worry, you can reuse this on all of your future questions. So you're really only doing work here at the beginning, getting yourself set up for success. And then as you create more quiz questions, you can reuse this layout again and again. So I'm going to go ahead and close my master view. And now all I need to do on my quiz question slide is right-click on the slide and choose Apply Layout. And there's that custom layout that I just created. And notice, and I might just have to do some clicking here so that it doesn't overlap. There we go. And then I can even reduce the size of this text. This is kind of large for this slide, but you can see how easy it is to apply that design here on our slide. And now it actually looks more cohesive with the rest of my course. So give that a try. If you are creating AI generated quiz questions and you're finding that you're having to apply design to them one by one, try creating a slide master layout for those questions, and then you can easily apply that to all of your quiz questions. Now let's hop over to Rise and chat about some quiz tips in Rise. This is actually not so much a tip, but more of a brand new feature that I want to show you. So here in Rise, we have a new feature in the AI Assistant called Magic Quiz Import. So if you have ever wanted to import quiz questions into Rise, and I'm talking specifically about quiz questions that, are previously written, you have all the quiz questions ready to go, you just want to import them into Rise and use them word for word, the Magic Quiz Import does exactly that. So let me show you how easy it is. So I'll just click on Magic Quiz Import here, and then I'll choose my file, which has all my quiz questions. So this is just a PDF. And so I'll go ahead and choose that. And while this is uploading, I'll show you what the PDF looks like. And I've actually attached this PDF to the resources page of the webinar today so that you can try this yourself. So here's what it looks like. It's simply a PDF that has quiz questions, and here at the top it says the question type, the main question, and then the answer options. Now here's the cool thing about the Magic Quiz Import. Because it is AI powered, you don't have to use this exact template. This is just the template that I used, and I find that it works well. You can use this kind of template as well if you want to, but you don't have to. If you have a look at the user guide for this new feature, you'll see that it's quite flexible. You could upload it, just as a normal Word document, and you could bold the correct answer. There are lots of different ways that you can indicate to the AI assistant how to build the question. This is just one way. And I wanted to provide it to you on the resources page so that you can, use this same template if you want, but again, it's not required. So as you go down, you can see all of my questions. It says the question type, and then the different answers here and feedback for each answer choice. So there's about 9 questions here in this quiz. Let's hop back over to Rise, and it's already done. And here are those 9 questions. And then if I click on this first one, you can see that it did add the question here at the top. All of my question choice text is here, as well as that feedback text. So have a look on the resources page, download the PDF that I attached at the very bottom of that page, and give it a try for yourself. Upload it to Rise and see how easy it works. And then if you are using AI Assistant, I recommend that you actually try this out on one of your projects that you're working on right now. Now, I do have a little bit of extra time, so I want to show you a couple of other new Rise features that you might have missed. The first one here is within the note block. So you've probably used this block before. In case you haven't, it is over in the statement area here. So at the very bottom, you'll see that note block. So the new feature here is that you can change the icon. So let me show you. This is actually really cool. I was having fun playing with this. So if we open up the content area, you can upload a new icon here, and it has to be an SVG file. So I have an icon of the eLearning Heroes community logo, and I'll just open that up here. And you'll notice that even though my SVG file is blue, it's going to come in as the icon color of the note block, but you can change the color. That's the beauty of an SVG file, is it's so flexible. So here I could come in and maybe I could say, well, I actually want that logo to be, let's say, maybe like purple or something like that. And then I could choose the background color of the note to also be a shade of purple. So I can really customize this any way that I like. So let's say I go with purple here and then choose a lighter color. So you can see how flexible this is. And it also is just really nice that you can upload your own icon here now. One other thing I want to call out is this option for corner radius. We've added this option here to round those corners a bit more. So if you want to do that, you have the ability there. In flashcard blocks, we added the option to adjust the size. So if you have ever needed to use 4 flashcards like this, you've probably run into this situation where you're thinking, man, I really don't like that there's this 1 flashcard down here on the bottom and 3 on the top. Well, now you can adjust the size to large so that now you have 2 and 2. So the option here makes it a little bit more flexible for how you can display those flashcards. And then you can also choose auto if you want to just keep it on that normal setting. And then down here at the bottom, one more thing. Actually, when I found out we were launching this feature, I was so excited. This is a long-awaited feature. So if you have ever disabled forward seeking on a video, what I mean by that is you don't allow the learner to skip ahead. You've probably also wanted that same feature for audio, but it hasn't ever been available until now. Now you can disable forward seeking on an audio file. So here under the format button, you can just click that button and you scroll down. Here's that option here to allow forward seeking. If you disable that, then that means that the learner will not be able to skip ahead on the audio. They'll have to play it and listen to the full thing. So if you have been waiting on that feature, it's finally here. Give it a try in Rise. Well, with that, let's go ahead and close out our session for today. Hopefully you found a tip or two that you can use in some of your projects that you're working on right now. We'll get the recording of today's webinar posted a little bit later today. And like I mentioned earlier, we'll also email that to you tomorrow. Now, if you want to learn more about anything in Articulate 360, you can find webinars for every single skill level on our training page. That's at community.articulate.com under the training and tutorials section. And then finally, if you learned something new from today's session, we would really love to hear about it. You can hit us up in the community, or you can mention us on LinkedIn and just say something like, hey, here's what I learned, or I really love that tip that David or Tom shared, or even if you have a question, that's a great place to post it. All right, well, thank you so much, Tom. Thanks, David, and thanks to all of you for spending your hour with us today. I hope that you enjoyed the session and that you got something out of it. Take care, and we'll see you soon in a future Articulate training webinar. Bye-bye.